The Columbine High School Massacre and the Aftermath by Maddie Rosenmarkel. So, what was the Columbine High School Massacre? It was basically a mass school shooting that occurred on April 20th, 1999 in the county of Littleton, Columbine, Colorado. And it was committed by students Eric Harris, who was 18 at the time and a senior, and as well as Dylan Klebold, his companion, and he was 17 and also a senior at the time, just a little bit younger than Eric Harris. At the time, it was the worst high school shooting in the United States. There was no really prior, events leading up to this at all. Any other school shootings that had this much of an effect on the United States as a whole and society as a whole. Right now, the Virginia Tech Massacre of 2007 currently holds the title of the deadliest shooting in American history, with a death toll of 32 and another total of 17 others being injured. But during this time in 1999, the death toll was 13 people, and Eric and Dylan injured a total of 24 other people as well. So this mass shooting obviously sparked up a lot of controversy and major debates about gun control. And, even just their motives and what maybe caused the perpetrators to commit this crime. So this obviously leads into, gun control. How stringent should it be within the United States? What kind of precautionary measures should we be taking when we talk about whether or not people should be able to purchase or even own firearms that could potentially be very lethal in such cases. So let's just get right into the actual perpetrators and the people who committed the crime. Eric David Harris, he was born on April 9th, 1981, and he died April 20th, 1999, on the day of the shooting. He did commit suicide at the scene of the crime as well. He was a senior at the time he committed the crime. So maybe some of the motives that played into this, situation. His father, Wayne, was an Air Force transport pilot, which caused the family to move from state to state quite frequently, which may be a possible stressor in his situation. He was described as a quote-unquote normal guy and a typical kid who didn't seem like anything that was portrayed on TV. This, kind of just goes to show how people didn't think that he was kind of the person who would be able to even execute something like this. But obviously there was more to him than what he showed the outside world. And then the other perpetrator, Dylan Bennett Klebold, he was born on September 11th, 1981. He also died April 20th, 1999, as another form of suicide at the scene of the crime. He was also a senior. After the massacre, people, even including his parents, expressed how surprised they were that he would never be able to carry out such a despicable crime or anything like this. However, his parents did admit in an interview that they overlooked the fact that their son was unhappy and failed to identify the clues that Dylan could potentially be a threat to himself and even others, as he displayed various signs of depression and suicidal tendencies. So I just wanted to kind of name off the victims as a sign of respect and to show their bravery in this situation. So I'm just going to go ahead and name off some of them. Cassie Bernal was a junior, and her parents actually wrote a biography on her life after the shooting as well. I just kind of wanted to add that in because I thought it was interesting. Steve Kernell, Corey DePuter, Kelly Fleming, Matthew Ketcher, Daniel Mauser, Daniel Rorbo, Rachel Scott, Isaiah Scholes, John Tomlin, Lauren Townsend, Kyle Velasquez, and William Sanders, who was the only teacher who was fatally shot. So I also kind of wanted to include the perpetrators' preliminary activities and intent, just kind of express what their mindset was going into committing this crime. So Harris and Klebold kept journals that included entries about how they were to carry out the massacre if it did happen. But their clear motives as to why they were committing it were never revealed. But however, these journals were recovered after the crime. So Harris also started an online blog a few years before the shooting on which he often expressed his negative opinions on his family, friends, and school. Few people visited this site, therefore these warning signs were completely ignored. They were both arrested in January of 1998 for stealing tools from a parked van, and they were forced to attend a court hearing where they were sentenced to attend a juvenile diversion program. So this slide kind of just goes to talk about some of the mental illness that Harris and Klebold struggled with. So Eric was on a medication for his self-diagnosed case of depression. Klebold, Dylan, claimed that he was depressed as well, but he was never diagnosed by a doctor or prescribed any medication, which could have potentially affected how he viewed himself and others. So in the months prior to the attack, Eric and Dylan acquired 2 9mm firearms and 2 12-gauge shotguns. They also received other firearms from 2 friends who were still under the age of 18 and considered minors, which is very odd in this circumstance because you have to be over the age of 18 to acquire a firearm. We do not know where they got these firearms to this day. We probably would suspect that they got them from maybe some of their parents, but still in this case, it was very fatal for 17 people. So this shooting that was committed by minors, people under the age of 18, well, at least one of them was under the age of 18, really just sparked up the debate over whether the perpetrators carried out the massacre due to bullying, maybe and/or, high school cliques, goth culture, gun culture, internet use, musical influence, or even violence in video games, which both the boys were very much into, as well as internet use. Mental illness also played a major role in this event because Harris did have depression as well as anger issues, and Klebold, Dylan, had very suicidal thoughts and tendencies that were pretty much ignored by his parents. And Eric and Dylan had allegedly, been victims of bullying for the previous 4 years leading up to the shooting. One author has claimed that the theory of quote-unquote revenge for bullying was a major motivation for the pair. So just some of the effects on gun control. The shooting resulted in more stringent gun control measures, as this had really never been seen before in the United States. In 2000, just a year after the shooting, federal and state legislation was introduced. They introduced that they would require safety locks on firearms, as well as the ban on the importation of high-capacity ammunition magazines, which was actually used in the shooting. Though laws were passed that made it a crime to buy guns for criminals, and as well as minors, there was controversy over legislation pertaining to background checks at gun shows. And in 2001, just 2 years after the shooting, Kmart, which had sold ammunition to the shooters, announced that it would no longer be selling handgun ammunition. So some effects on school security. Following the Columbine shooting, schools across the United States enforced new security measures such as see-through backpacks or clear backpacks, metal detectors, screening people before they get into school uniforms, and as well as security guards to kind of, watch around the campus, make sure nothing suspicious is occurring. Some schools even implemented school door numbering to improve public safety response. So they would kind of have a code to communicate back to local law enforcement, just to take precaution in such case if there was another act of school shootings. So several schools throughout the country resorted to requiring students to wear computer-generated IDs as well. And local police departments reassessed their tactics and now train for Columbine-like situations after criticism over the slow response and progress of the SWAT teams during the shooting. So these are kind of just an aerial view of the school. The senior parking lot is visible in this picture, and that is where Dylan Klebold parked his car with the bomb planted inside that went off before the shooting. and the sign on the outside of the building with the school's mascot and name is presented to the right. And the mascot, which was a rebel, used to carry a gun. However, after the shooting, it was removed. And just some of the memorials to kind of commemorate the people who have passed. They are located really near the premises of the school, and people often visit it. So just sort of a timeline of the actual crime. So around 11:10, Eric Harris and Dylan Klebold arrive at the school in separate vehicles. At 11:17, they approach the school after one of their planted bombs failed to detonate, with many firearms and bombs hidden in their trench coats and duffel bags. At 11:19 a.m., the first shots are fired at Rachel Scott and Richard Casaldo, and then 3 other students were fired at and hit as well, and one was killed in that time. At 11:24, the on-campus police officer, Deputy Gardner, pulls into the Lower South parking lot, and Harris fires shots at him. He returns the gunfire, but no one is hit. At 11:26, Coach Dave Sanders is shot. At this point, students and faculty realize that there's something much more serious than a senior prank, as what everybody thought it was to be before, and people are hiding wherever they can. At 11:29, Harris and Klebold enter the school library where 56 people are hiding. While in the library, the boys exchanged gunfire with law enforcement outside of the window and managed to kill 10 people and injure 12 others. This is when the last victim is killed, and at 11:37 a.m., multiple pipe bombs are thrown down the hallway as Harris and Klebold make their way through the school. They look into the classroom door windows, peering at students, but do nothing. And at 11:40, deputies report that approximately 30 students have exited the school on the west side. These students take cover behind a patrol car. And then at 11:46 a.m., a previously planted bomb detonates in the cafeteria, causing a small fire, but is put out by sprinkler systems. At 12:02, the first squad of Littleton and Denver County SWAT officers approach the school. At 12:03, another law enforcement officer on the scene, Deputy Walker, sees a muzzle flash from the library window where the shooters are located and returns fire. And then at 12:08 p.m., the shooters, Dylan Klebold and Eric Harris, commit suicide in the library. Both causes of death were self-inflicted gunshot wounds to the head. And then these are just my citations. Thank you for viewing my presentation. I really appreciate it.